It was once unimaginable. Places where Christ's name was unknown, where no Mass was ever celebrated, no priest ever rose for Eucharist, yet in just one generation, these lands became Catholic nations. Not by conquest, but by conviction. What you're about to hear is more than history. These are stories of hope forged amidst violence, faith blossoming in silence, and entire nations transformed, not from abroad, but from within. From volcanic valleys to forest huts, from martyrdom under persecution to cities buzzing with youth choirs, these 5 countries flipped from zero to majority Catholic. Their roadmaps were not strategic plans. They were stories of suffering, solidarity, and resurrection. Stay with me, because each nation teaches us that the Church grows where it's needed most, not where it's safest. Timor-Leste. In the early 1970s, fewer than 20% of Timorese were Catholic. Today, according to the 2022 census, approximately 97.5% of the 1.3 million population identifies as Roman Catholic, putting Timor-Leste alongside Vatican City as the most Catholic UN member state. The flashpoint was in 1975, when the newly declared independent nation was invaded by Indonesia. Over 2 decades of occupation followed, costing 1/3 of its people. The Church, however, did not retreat. It became a refuge, a microphone for truth, and a shield for resistance. Bishop Carlos do Carmo da Silva, later made cardinal, found himself delivering sermons secretly recorded and passed village to village. When Pope Francis visited in September 2024, over 600,000 people, almost half the nation, gathered at Taisai for an open-air Massachusetts national mourning followed his April 2025 death, and President Horta affirmed that flags would fly at half-mast for a week. These gatherings weren't religious spectacles. They were national sighs of faith. Today the Church in Timor-Leste runs universities, hospitals, schools serving tens of thousands, and remains deeply interwoven with civil society. In a land once divided by fear, the Mass is now the binder of identity. And so we cross oceans to one of Africa's smallest nations in area, but with a faith story that transformed identity itself. Burundi. At the dawn of the 20th century, Catholic presence in Burundi was negligible, fewer than 6,000 baptized by 1915. Today, around 62% of Burundians identify as Catholic, within a Christian population of nearly 94%. The missionaries arrived not with power, but with presence. They built schools, translated scripture into Kirundi, treated the sick, and taught the illiterate. Their credibility grew not from doctrine, but deeds. When ethnic violence erupted in the 1990s, Catholic institutions became sanctuaries. Priests turned between armed militias and frightened villagers. Religious sisters smuggled medical help into blockaded zones. Many paid that courage with their lives. The payoff was that when the country was shattered by civil war, the Church was one of the few stable moral centers. Even as state violence caused fractures, Catholic leaders called for peace and forgiveness. Today Burundian Catholic schools, hospitals, and peace commissions remain central to national cohesion. Next, we draw closer to the equator, to Rwanda, a story of collapse and resurgence. By the early 1990s, Rwanda was majority Catholic. Estimates from the 2022 census place Catholics at around 40 to 57%, with most sources around 46% of a population about 12–13 million. Then came 1994. Within 100 days, nearly 1 million people were slaughtered, even inside churches that were seen as sanctuaries. Some clergy sheltered the innocent, some incited violence. The cross could no longer be assumed as sanctuary. But then came the Church's confession. Bishops issued apologies. The Church assisted with burials, offered reconciliation dialogues, reopened schools, and embraced the survivors. A generation born after the genocide began laying claim to faith not as tradition, but as redemption. Numbers may now show Catholics between 46 and 57%, but what matters more is that today, youth catechism groups meet in villages once torn by hatred. Lay movements and interfaith reconciliation initiatives are sprouting everywhere. This isn't revival of cultural Catholicism. It is creation of a lived, fragile trust. Now we turn to the jungles of the Pacific and the most linguistically diverse country on Earth, Papua New Guinea. Before the late 1800s, Christianity was unknown in these islands. Today about 26 to 27% of its 8 to 9 million people are Catholic, 2 million believers, and about 95 to 98% identify as Christian overall. Missionaries trekked rivers, slept in huts, learned local languages, healing, teaching, living among the peoples. Catholicism grew not from sermons but relationships. Native catechists led liturgies in tribal harmonies. Masses are celebrated under woven huts accompanied by ritual dance. In 2025, PNG's parliament amended the constitution to declare itself a Christian nation, naming God and the Bible as national symbols. Archbishop Tatamai cautioned, "Which Christianity are we referring to? Amid denominational diversity." Catholicism did not erase tribal identity, it complemented it. The result is a church that feels indigenous, not imported. It teaches in villages where government never came, heals in clinics the state never funded, and baptizes children in languages their ancestors sang. Finally, the story takes us to one of the planet's most urbanized and modern societies, South Korea. South Korea. There were no missionaries in the late 1700s. Instead, Korean Confucian scholars discovered Catholic texts from China, baptized each other, worshipped underground. By the time foreign priests arrived, a Catholic community was already waiting. Fast forward to today, Catholics comprise 11.3% of the population, about 5.97 million people as of end 2023, after rising from 500,000 in the 1960s. Over 58,000 baptisms took place in 2024, a 13.7% increase over the previous year. Adult converts make up 2/3. Stations of adoration, lay meditation groups, and global missionary organizations now arise from South Korea. Its seminaries are full, including newly ordained deaf and sibling priests in Seoul, where about 1,000 priests serve the archdiocese. Regular Sunday Mass attendance was only about 15% in 2024 as secularization affects society, but that hasn't diminished the church's social credibility. Koreans widely trust Catholic institutions for democracy activism, social welfare, and interfaith dialogue. These aren't just stories of conversion, they are testimonies of transformation. Timor-Leste, nearly 98% Catholic. Burundi, around 62%. Rwanda, roughly 46% again. Papua New Guinea, over 2 million Catholics, about 26%. South Korea, 11%, but growing with mission energy. For a global church of about 1.4 billion Catholics, these nations are microcosms not of power, but of presence. When the church walks through suffering with the people, not above them, it becomes indispensable. Share this video if these stories moved you. Let people know, faith doesn't grow through force, it grows through faithfulness. Subscribe for more deep dives into how belief shapes nations. Comment below, which story touched you most, and why? If you want to know where Bible is banned, click on this video right now.